Well, I had to tell you this, but you're being sold a bag of lies as it relates to pricing and sales strategies. All over the internet, all over social media, are people promoting this idea of selling high ticket items. Sounds really enticing because it makes you think, oh, I can make a lot of money off of one sale. The problem is you have to be able to deliver on that promise. So if you're offering high ticket items, you really have to deliver amazing quality. Otherwise, you just can't charge high ticket prices. So in my experience, a lot of entrepreneurs just don't have that level of execution to charge high ticket items. What you can and should charge for your product comes from a variety of factors, and pricing strategies really are key in your go-to-market motions. They're both science and art, and we're going to talk through those right now. So first thing I want you to understand is you can't figure out what you should charge until you know your costs to produce and deliver that product. That's really important for you to catch on to. It's not just a matter of producing a product, you have to deliver it. There are some products and services that have delivery mechanisms on the back end and that require intervention and can't just use tech. And that comes with a cost. Or sometimes the tech to deliver that thing has a cost with it too. So to build your pricing structure, you really have to start with what does it cost me to produce this in the first place? Because if you're charging $10, but it costs you $10 and a penny, you're just going to lose money and you're not going anywhere. In accounting, we call this cost of goods sold. That's a fact. That's something that you really need to be thinking about. And beyond that, you have operating expenses that add into these things. So you need to consider all of this when you're figuring out your pricing strategy. Now, I believe that as part of your go-to-market strategies, your pricing strategies should tie to your customers' goals. It's just a personal belief I want to share with you. What am I trying to say about that? Whatever your customer's trying to accomplish is how you should charge for your product. In the software world, let's think about, in an earlier lesson, I used the idea of a business loan. Let's say you built software that helps financial institutions and lenders originate business loans. In my mind, the way you should price that product is for every business loan application, your software has to work on. Every application you charge for. That's tying the customer, in this instance, the lender, tying their goals to how you price. And what that does is that aligns you with your customer. The goal they're trying to accomplish and the thing that your solution is offering to do for them is tied together. And that's how you think about your pricing structure along the way. You also have to think about ongoing development with your pricing structure. So it's not just a one-time thing. It's not just, well, okay, I'm going to build this thing and then I start delivering it. If you have future enhancements that have to go with your product, then you're going to have to think about your pricing structure there. Another thing to think about regarding pricing models and strategies is you don't want to be overcomplicated. You don't want to introduce a pricing strategy that prospects and customers don't understand. If prospects and customers in your market are used to specific pricing strategies, if you introduce a new one, it could cost you because of the educational components of getting them to understand why you're doing that. Personal story with Go Grab Lunch, my first startup, we thought we were brilliant with our pricing strategy. We only charged the restaurants that we sent paying patrons to when it occurred. It was a success fee. So they didn't pay us anything unless we helped them make money. We thought that made perfect sense because it aligned our strategy with theirs. The problem is they're all used to paying for advertising. And so a lot of them that we would talk to just didn't understand what we were trying to do, even though we thought it made perfect sense. So you need to be aware of this educational cost with getting too fancy with your pricing strategies and or offering a pricing strategy that is new to your market and that the prospects will not quite understand. Now, I want to tie pricing strategies back to this idea of problem market fit, product market fit, and platform market fit. Now, at problem market fit, your pricing strategy doesn't have to be entirely dialed in. You can use it to test demand for your product and to gauge what we call buyer price elasticity, which is basically how much a buyer is willing to allow price to move before they stop buying your product. You shouldn't toss out pricing wildly. You do need to do your research. Some of this is part of looking at competitors and figuring out what they're charged and looking at your costs. So you need to think intelligently about how you're going to price at the problem market phase, but realize that it doesn't have to be locked in. Another thing I will share, I actually learned from my daughter when she was about 10 years old, is it's easier to start your pricing on the low side and move up as demand increases instead of the inverse. If you start too high and start to back down, now you're in price wars with competitors, and that can be tough to win. So one of the things I like to recommend, especially when you're still in the problem market fit phase, is to start a little bit on the lower side than where you would feel comfortable and edge up your pricing as demand increases. For some of my digital products, what I'll do is for every X number of sales, I go up $5. That's one way I've actually done this before. And then eventually what happens is as I increase it a little bit, I'll notice that sales slows down enough to where I'm still comfortable, but the increase in price is making up for the difference in volume. That's one way you can do that. When you get to product market fit, go back and look at the definition of this. Pricing needs to be more consistent, and you should be value focused to some degree. So if you're at the product market fit phase, you need to have a consistent pricing. You don't want to test as often. You don't want to change it as often. And you need to be focused on the price that you charge is directly tied to the value that you offer. Opportunities for increases in pricing usually come from adding new features or enhancements or more things to your product or service. When you hit platform market fit phase, you need to think about how pricing is a competitive advantage for you. At that point, maybe your costs are so low that you can charge less than your competitors, but you're still offering more value than they do. There's very little need for you to negotiate and offer discounts at this phase because customers want your product so badly above everybody else that you're essentially in charge. So to reiterate, your pricing strategy should vary based on the phase of your product life cycle that you are in. Now, I'd like you to think about a few other things as it relates to pricing, and then we're going to talk about a couple of different models and the positives and negatives, okay? So what products do you have that have product market fit, but the adoption of those products hasn't quite scaled? If that's happening, then there's a pricing issue. That can also be true at the problem market and platform market fit levels. So if you notice that your product is not scaling at a decent clip, then you have some sort of pricing challenge. You need to revisit it with research and things like that. What products have platform market fit that you can leverage for cross-sell opportunities? So remember, at platform market fit, we have multiple products that have product market fit. And so if you're lucky enough to get to or are already in that phase, you need to think about how can we leverage some of those products to cross-sell. Some of my digital products, that's pretty easy. I have one that's the most popular, and then I've used its popularity to kind of cross-sell a parallel product that goes with it that bolts on to that offering. What products appeal to the highest value customers where you can capture margin easily? So if you go back and revisit your ICP, start tracking the customers that buy your product that fit your ICP and then segment further. And if some of those are buying, they're increasing your average ticket price, then those are the ones you're going to want to target. And then lastly, consider if you have multiple products, what products can you sell in the exact same way to the same buyer for the same outcome? This allows you to scale a lot easier when you have a successful product, you add other products onto it, and you basically copy paste the pricing strategies and go-to-market strategies along the way. Let's talk through a couple of different product pricing models that you are going to want to consider. Again, reiterating that overly complex product models are very, very dangerous. All right, so value-based pricing. The idea is that the perceived value is what sets the price. Customers are willing to pay regardless, basically, of production costs, okay? Now, value-based pricing tends to work not so well in the problem market fit phase because you're not quite offering the level of value that you should. Advantages of value-based pricing is you can maximize profits and you can align pricing with customer perception. The disadvantages requires a lot of in-depth customer understanding, and that's why it doesn't work in the problem market fit phase. You could do cost plus pricing. So go back to where I was talking about understanding the costs to develop or build or make your product. When you understand those really well, you can just take those costs and add your margin on top of it. So example would be, if it costs you $50 to make your widget and you want a 50% margin, just charge $100. That's one way to do it. Sometimes you see this in construction as a good example. Some builders will just charge you cost plus what it takes to build your house, and that plus is just the margin they want to make. An advantage of cost plus is it's easy to calculate and it ensures profitability as long as you know your costs in and out. Disadvantages is it doesn't consider the actual value or market competition because their costs could be lower than yours, and so you're setting yourself up for some trouble. You can do competitive pricing. This is basically pricing to beat your competitors no matter what. Sometimes we see this with well-funded startups. They come in with a price so low just to capture market share, even though they're losing money. An advantage of competitive pricing is it's simple to implement, and it does help you typically win market share. Challenge can be it leads to price wars. It's basically a race to the bottom, and you will end up commoditizing pricing somewhere along the way, and it's not optimal for long-term profitability. It's really just a short-term game. You can do price skimming, which is setting a high price for a product and then lowering over time. I don't like this method, but you could do it. You can generate early profits and it allows for market segmentation. The challenge is it may discourage price-sensitive customers. So if you're pricing really high, you could be pricing out some of the market that you do want to capture, assuming that's the case. You can price for penetration, which is similar to skimming, but it's the inverse. You can set a low initial price to get market share. We talked about that, so I'm going to move on. Dynamic. You could price based on different factors, such as demand, competition, time of day, all these different things. The problem with this is it's hard to implement. It's really hard to track and keep up with. And if you're changing pricing too much, you'll drive away customers. You're probably familiar with the freemium pricing. So a lot of subscription-based services will do this. They have a free model just to get you using the product, and then they will try and charge you for premium features. A lot of this is done in software as a service. It can attract a large user base for you, and it does give you upsell opportunities, but the disadvantage is if you don't have a clear value proposition for the premium offering, it could be challenging to convert free users. Sometimes also with free users, you're having a cost to maintain those free users. Think about ChatGPT. All the people that are using the free plan are costing them to process that data. They're not making money off them. Their goal, though, is that they know a certain percentage they need to convert to be profitable. Of course, they're pulling it off, but it's not easy for everybody. A couple more pricing models to think about. Subscription pricing. This would be like, paying, what is it now, $24, $26 per month for Netflix. It's predictable revenue, which is why subscription-based pricing is just so popular. If you know that you're getting $24 per user and you know the number of users you have, the number you're adding per month, and the number you're losing per month, you can easily project out the cash flow that you're going to have, which is really nice. It's flexible. You can scale it up and down, and there's a low barrier to entry with this. Again, it allows more affordable plans for customers. So if you combine freemium and subscription, it makes it easier. The disadvantage to this is you have to watch for churn. If you have too high a churn, meaning the number of customers that cancel on you during say a given month, that's a problem. And customer acquisition costs can be a little high with this. So go back to the example of using Google Ads, and I used the example in a previous lesson about business loans, and it was $12 per click, and then we could calculate that all the way out to the total cost to actually make a sale. If that's higher, if your customer acquisition cost is higher than your subscription revenue, you're in trouble. There's variations on subscription models. You could do a flat rate. You could do tiered based on things. You could do a usage base. I've seen per user. So Salesforce, the CRM software solution, charges per user that comes onto it. There's also a licensing model. So customers basically buy a license to software for a specific period of time or lifetime. You can see this with like desktop software, although sometimes you do have to upgrade. You get a lot of upfront revenue this way, and there's clear ownership. They've paid for the license. It's theirs. The challenges with this is it's unpredictable revenue, and you have to worry about piracy and things like that. It's just not as agile. So subscriptions provided recurring revenue stream, which is really, really great. Customer relationships, things like that. Subscriptions foster ongoing engagement. Essentially, what I'm going to tell you is that for most pricing models out there, you need it to make sense with what your ICP is willing to do, with what competitors are willing to do. But I will tell you, across all these models that I just shared with you, it seems like subscription-based models are very, very popular these days. strictly because of the idea of recurring revenue. You've seen people talk about MRR or ARR. MRR is monthly recurring revenue. ARR is annual recurring revenue. These are very popular because you know the amount of money you're going to have coming in every single month. As long as you're attracting new customers and you're not losing too many customers and you're priced right for your costs, you're golden. Subscription-based is very popular. And believe it or not, you can apply subscription-based to even a service. So for example, my personal accountant, it used to be that my accountant, a different accountant, was charging me a flat rate to do my tax return every single year. I have an accountant I've been working with this current tax season, and they were just charging me a monthly rate. Now, why would they do that? It was a lower entry cost. And also, but by the end of that full period, it actually ended up being more revenue than the flat rate. So these are all things you have to weigh. Flat rate gets you more money up front. Subscription, as long as you can keep your customers, can often be more. And again, it's predictable. You want to think intelligently about your pricing strategy because it is one of the key levers you can pull in your go-to-market strategies.